Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Togozongwenya. I'm a Flag Fellow and I'll be your facilitator for today. Today we are discussing the state of women, children, queer, and disabled people in South Africa. We have two lovely panelists. One is coming still. We have Nomtandazo, who's coming from a youth crime prevention desk. We also have Nkateko, who is a TikTok influencer. So I'd just like for each and every one of you guys to introduce yourselves. We can start with Nkateko and then Nomtandazo you can follow.
Hi everyone, my name is Kateko Baloy. I'm 26 years old, born and raised in South Africa. Pretoria, sorry. Born and raised in Pretoria. I have a disability called osteogenesis imperfecta and scoliosis. And like Ntokozo said, I am a TikToker. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nomtanda Zozulu. I'm from an organization called YYCPD, which stands for Yuval Youth Crime Prevention Desk. We deal with the social issues that the community of Yuval face. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everyone. Thank you so much. That was really lovely. So, our topic today is mainly about the state of women in South Africa because it remains a very precarious issue due to high levels of gender based violence and the state of other factors. So, putting an end to GBV is essentially very important for creating a safer and more inclusive society for women and young people, where we will prioritize their rights and well being and make sure that they are upheld and respected. It is also important for the leaders and representatives of political parties to ensure that the commitment to the full implementation of the National Strategic Plan for GBVF is in their manifestos and it is implemented. So, in this webinar, we will discuss the strategies and recommendations addressing GBVF through policy and advocacy. So, I just want this to be a conversation, right? It will just be a discussion. It's nothing formal. You don't have to have stats and give us stats. If you have, great. But if not, that's also okay. We just need to discuss and then unpack. So, just a little about why vote for you. Why Vote for You is a campaign that seeks to challenge and hold accountable those who are seeking to govern. We are urging them to commit to prioritizing GBV through proactive implementation of the NSP for GBVF in their manifesto. So, I'll just like to ask a simple question, right? We are celebrating, a lot of people are saying 1994. 2024 is the new 1994. I'm not sure I agree, but all I can say is that we are finally in 30 years of democracy. So, Nomtandas, according to you, what does 30 years of democracy mean?
Can you please repeat the question, ma'am?
Okay, so what does 30 years of democracy mean to you as a young person who's also in youth crime and prevention?
I think it means when the political parties come together and try to unite so that they can find a change in a country or community.
Thank you very much, Mukhao. Hello, welcome. How are you doing? It's nice of you to join us.
I'm trying to enable the camera, but it doesn't say no. But thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Can you please just introduce yourself, Mukhao? We've already started with the introductions. We just missed you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Muhammad Gitla. My pronouns are they, them. I am a digital campaign strategist in the NGO sector. Yeah, that particularly focuses on LGBTQIA rights.
Nice. Thank you very much. So I mentioned before that this is not a formal conversation, right? It's just a conversation amongst us. There's no need to be formal. We just talking. I hope you feel comfortable and just feel at home. We are speaking about 30 years of democracy. I'm going to move on to Mukateko and then I'm going to come right back to you.
May you please repeat the question for me?
So I was just asking, what does 30 years of democracy mean to you?
To me, it's meant 30 years of somewhat equality, unity, and just trying to come together as a country. That's what it means to me.
I'm struggling to hear you. Can you please just tune yourself up a bit?
Okay, I'm so sorry. Is it better now? Okay, sorry. It means equality. It means. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. It means us trying to come together as a country means trying to unify. And I say trying because I don't think we're entirely there yet. I think as a country that's the aim, but we still have a long way to go. Yeah, that's what it means to me.
Thank you so much. So, Mohau, over to you. They're saying 1994, 2024 is the new 1994. All I'm saying is that 30 years democracy, what does that mean to you in particular? Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? All right. Awesome. So I was saying that for me, 30 years of democracy really is a time for us to reflect on the complex history of South Africa and reflect on where we are now and try to think of a way forward, especially as we approach the upcoming national elections. I think that it's a time for us to reevaluate, are we happy with the state of the nation? Do we need to make changes? And if so, what are those changes going to be?
Thank you very much. So, interestingly enough, today I'm in the room with the people we are supposed to be asking these questions. They highlighted something about how we are at 30 years, yes, but it didn't mean at that time that 30 years would have meant the eradication of everything that people have faced. Some highlighted the fact that in the 30 years, they have Black people sitting in boardrooms. Some said in the 30 years, we have 45% of Black people, young people. Basically, the unemployment rate has increased since then. So I'll just give us a bit of focus areas to just guide our train of thoughts, right, with our conversation. Remember, it's just the chats, nothing formal, guys. We laugh, we ask each other questions, we bounce off each other's energy. Is that all right? Great. So, the first focus area, we will be discussing the challenges and barriers that women face in South Africa. This is inclusive of gender based violence, economic equality, and lack of representation in leadership positions. So, I have a few questions. I'll start with you, Mohau. So, what would you say are the most pressing issues that are faced by queer individuals in South Africa today? And how does the organization that you're part of address these issues?
All right. Um, I think that if I were to be able to like summarize it all, a lot of the issues that we face is not being able to access our basic human rights, you know. And in what we do as Iranti, and I'll give an example now, but what we do as Iranti is that we try to go out into communities and teach people about their rights. We try to work with grassroots organizations so that we are not just here as a Johannesburg-based organization, telling people in northwest what they should be doing and how they should contextualize their challenges. I think to like giving an example, one of the challenges that people face, like that queer people face and intersex people face, is legal gender recognition, right? So that is basically, you know, that M or that F on your ID document. What happens when you are a non-binary person like myself? Like, are you now forced to box yourself within M or F? Another challenge that we often face is that for transgender individuals, their gender marker, which is the MNF that I had mentioned, their gender marker does not reflect their gender identity. So what happens is that when they are trying to access the services in South Africa, because in South Africa you need to bring your ID and proof of residence for everything. They pitch up with their ID document, and you'll find that the service person that is assisting you, they're looking at your gender marker and they're looking at you, and for them, they feel like it doesn't make sense, and now they discriminate against you, and now you're unable to access your basic rights. Something as simple as voting. A lot of people, they face discrimination at voting stations because people are looking at their IDs and saying, but I don't understand. And then they face like hostile, it creates like a hostile environment, and now they don't want to go access that service anymore, right? So a lot of the work that we do as Iranti is advocating for recognition of these rights. I know that in the past 2 years, I think 2 years ago, we had like a campaign where we collaborated with Home Affairs to create a safe space for gender diverse people to correct their gender markers, right? But even a challenge that we're still facing now is that there's a backlog with Home Affairs. So things that were done, things that were applied for 2 years ago still have not been received. So those are like some of the challenges. But as Iranti, what we try to do is that we try to at least call Home Affairs to say, please come through so that we can create a better, a safer environment for individuals within our office spaces, rather than them having to go out and get on a taxi and then go stand in the line at Home Affairs with, and with all the challenges that they might face within that particular route. So just trying to create programs where we assist with making services more accessible, but also trying to address the challenges as well.
Thank you so much for that. So I just picked up a few things, ma'am. You spoke about teaching people their rights, educating them about their rights. Would you say that people are not well versed, or they do not quite understand what their rights are at this point?
I would say that things are not always accessible, right? So even if like, for example, if you go to the police station and you experience like violence and you want to report it, what happens now if there's like a road, like the police don't take the case seriously in terms of like teaching people of their rights, or like trying to make them more accessible? That would mean like going into a community and saying, okay, this is how you should report a certain thing, and if the police are not willing to help you, this is how you contact, or this is how you lodge a complaint with IPID, right? So it's things like that, like making that information more accessible. I think that even when we look at South Africa, a country that has about 12 official languages, a lot of the information that we receive is in English, which is not always accessible to people. So sometimes just teaching people about their rights and creating that source of knowledge also means just going into communities and speaking the language that they speak so that they understand what's happening, because a lot of things get lost in the jargon. Right. So yeah, I think that the rights are there and people know about them broadly. If they do, not everybody does. But also, how do we access them? How do we use them to our advantage? Even with something such as the UN, do people know how to use the UPR, Universal Periodic Reviews, like to call for change in their country? So like things like that, making this information a little bit more accessible by going to the people and also trying to teach them about it in a way that makes sense.
Thank you very much for that. And if you tune in, please feel free to ask some questions. We are always here to just answer you. So moving on to Nkateko, right? So you're a TikTok influencer, right? You are living with osteogenesis imperfecta scoliosis. I'm not sure if I pronounced that well. Please just teach us how to, as part of educating, please let the pronunciation be a part of that too. How would you say you use your platform, which is TikTok, to raise maybe awareness about disability rights and challenges that are faced by disabled individuals within South Africa?
Your pronunciation was perfect. Osteogenesis imperfecta and scoliosis. It's not one thing. It's two separate conditions. But I would say I don't fully utilize my TikTok platform to the extent that I should be in terms of educating people about my specific prognosis. I think I use it to just bring awareness to to disability as a whole. And I think I do that by using humor, because I think people are easy to pick up on, like, are easy to, it grabs people's attention when you use humor. I think it's what has been starting most conversations that I've been having with humor. Like, oh, that's funny, but like, and then people go on to ask questions about it. And I think that's how I've been going about it, to create awareness by using humor. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I just ask? I'm sure we all have the same question. Can you just explain the conditions to us? Because we do not understand them. Just a brief explanation, if you do feel comfortable, that is.
Yes, I am so sorry. So osteogenesis imperfecta is a brittle bone disease. It just means that my bones are made out of glass, and my body does not produce enough collagen. Not sure how to say that word. To create muscles in my body. So, um, it is a spectrum. Not everybody, like, for some people, you can just like touch them a little bit and they would break. And for some people, they can go their entire lives like breaking maybe once or twice. But it is a spectrum. Not everybody is as fragile as the other person with it. um I'm trying to get to remember everything. Yeah. And then scoliosis is a result of my osteogenesis. Not everybody with osteogenesis has scoliosis. I unfortunately do. Just means that because my bones were so soft that my back couldn't carry my body weight, and it caused my back to curve. And um that's why I also have scoliosis, because my back is curved. Scoliosis just means that you do not have a straight back, and it causes, and it can mess with your lungs and your posture, and just, yeah. And also, not everybody, I use a wheelchair. Not everybody with scoliosis or osteogenesis uses a wheelchair. It's just, for me, that's how the chain of events turned out. Yes.
Thank you just so much. Can I also just say that you are very, very brave? Thank you for sharing your story with us. Can I ask one last question, right, before I move on? Would you say, in terms of the disability that you currently have, in society, is it an inclusive society to cater for the kind of condition that you have? Do you feel catered for with this particular disability? Please unmute, Mama.
I'm so sorry. I would say yes and no. I would say people are trying to understand how to cater for certain disabilities, but I think a lot of the times we're left out of the conversation, and people try to figure out what we want without consulting us, and therefore they do things for us that we do not like. I did not ask for this. I said I wanted to be included, and you left me out of the conversation, and you did things that are not helpful for me. But I see you trying, but we just want to be brought into the conversation, if that makes sense, so that we can help you understand what it is we want. um I think, uh, yes, sorry, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. So one last question, but I need you to sit with this one. It's not something we're gonna get back to it. What would you like for us to include as a country in the conversation with regards to the disability that you currently have? So what is it in particular that you want us to know? So when we talk about it, we know it's okay. There's a Nkateko, she's facing this issue. This is the awareness. This is what she has to deal with. Maybe we can find possible solutions to it. Yeah?
Okay.
Thank you. So now moving to Nomtanda. So Nomtandas, I have a very interesting question for you. So seeing the work that you do, can you just explain to us what is a youth crime prevention desk? What do you do?
Youth Crime Prevention Desk. It is a structure of young people established by the South African Police Station and the Department of Community Safety to bring young people together from youth, organizations, and school general public. The structure also serves as a platform of provision of developmentally training for youth. So what we actually do, we respond to community safety concerns by working with the South African police stations, schools, and other stakeholders to host programs such as high school debates and school safety desks, other things, sports against crime, substance abuse campaigns, crime awareness, child protection, prison talks, house numbering program, positive relationship between police and the community, youth empowerment and motivational talks, road shows on the safety. That's what we do. And some of the GBV issues.
Thank you. So ngicela ukubuza ngesiZulu ne, since uye ebantwini, so abanishaya abanlwisi, how's the response from the people with the work that you're trying to do?
Okay, I'll start by saying Abantu, they don't fight us because we feel like if there are many organizations that come to schools and home telling people about how do they deal with social issues. But when we feel like if Ukuluma is youth to youth, you'll understand because I will tell you about the challenges that I faced in life. And I think you are going to understand me. Instead of umuntu omdala uyazokutshela ukuthi, okay, I'm facing this type of issue. Do you think is it going to work? It's not going to work because there are many organizations out there abake bafike ezikolweni homes trying to tell people ukuthi beyekele izinto eziso, facing social issues, but we feel like we as the youth can change the community of Yuval because it is a drastic community with a lot of excruciating things.
Thank you so much for that. So are you basically saying youth to youth is better in terms of conversation?
Can you please repeat your question, ma'am?
So you're saying that when you're conversating with a young person as a young person, it's easier than having to conversate maybe with someone who's older, trying to sort out their issue?
Yes, it's much easier.
Okay. Does the panel have a question maybe for anyone amongst each other? Do we have anything we'd like to ask? Maybe something we found interesting?
I do. May I go? All right. I wanted to ask Nomthandazo, how do people access the Youth Crime Prevention Desk?
Or you can access us by following our Facebook pages.
Oh, okay. And then, like, if I have an issue, do I just send you a message via Facebook, or is there like a form that I must fill in?
You can send me a message via Facebook,
Okay.
our social platforms.
Awesome.
Which are
That's great.
Are you going to need them?
I mean, you can give them for the people that are listening. I will also pass them on to the young people that I know. Myself, I'm also young, I think. Is it for like only teenagers or like what's the age? When you guys say youth, what do you mean? Let's maybe be clear there.
Pardon, ma'am?
I was asking when you say youth, what's the age group that you guys usually work with?
It's from the age of 16 to 21.
Oh, okay, awesome. Okay.
Does anyone else have a question before we move on to another highlight for the conversation? Okay, no questions. Okay. So we are going to move on to the second segment of this conversation. We will be examining the progress and achievements of the women's rights movement and feminist activism in the country. So I will start with you, Rupal, since you are the closest, I think, in relation to this issue. What would you say the improvement has been, especially with queer people, in terms of the movement and in terms of activism? in particular to queer people, but also people who are disadvantaged as well.
Sorry about that. And I just wanted to check in. When you say movement, which movement are you referring to?
So we can refer
Like
to
the
any
political
movement in
movement?
general. Political movement, Iranti as an organization, because as you go to grassroots and you become an activist, it becomes a movement for the particular party or the people that you're representing.
Okay. Um, I think that there has been increased visibility and increased participation in the movement, like especially like in the last 30 years, you know. At some point, we weren't as visible as queer people, and now I feel like the visibility is steadily increasing, and we're even at a point where as we're collaborating with each other to further like widen our networks. I think that's the visibility is increased, but obviously also like in terms when it comes to activism, there's always room for more work, right? But I'm very proud of the progress that we have made. I'm very proud of South Africa and where our constitution stands in.
Okay. Are you back?
Yes, where did you
Have
lose
you
me?
back? South Africa in particular, let's take it up from there.
All right. I was saying that it is quite commendable with the South African Constitution, how firmly the South African Constitution stands within recognizing queer rights as human rights. But obviously, like I'm saying, like in the activist world, there's always more to do. So, as much as we have a great constitution, we need to make sure that these things are applicable in like real life and not just on paper. So, there's work to be done, but I think it's remarkable what we've done so far, and I'm excited to see us continue to make progress, continue to also just enter the global space with the rights. Like I think that um, many a times within the global space, the global south, which South Africa falls under, is often neglected in these conversations that we're having. But like, I think that we're stepping into a place where as we are there at global conferences, giving the South African perspective and talking to world leaders about how they can contextualize the work that they do so that it is more accommodating to much to the global south. So I think more work to be done, but we are working as activists. I think there was a second part of the question, but I don't know if I answered it all.
No, you answered it all. You gave us an idea, but I have another question, right? It forms part of this. As an advocate myself, I believe in it's like charity. Charity begins at home. Advocacy also starts at home. Have you been having these conversations? Have you been advocating at home for the movement, for the rights, for the conversation that we're having? Have you had it outside of these spaces? Have you had it where you currently are?
I would definitely say yes. Like before I knew about feminism, I was always the friend that was the party pooper, the one that you can't speak about women like that. So definitely has been that, you know, and in the space that I'm currently in, I'm fortunate enough to work for an organization that focuses on queer rights. So I do invite my loved ones into the spaces so that they can come and learn. I do repost some of the work that we've done so that they can see this is what Mohao does when they say that they can't come through, and they learn a little bit about the work that I do. I think that also as a activist who advocates for LGBTQIA rights, my activism is also my life, right? So when I step into a room and I say that you can't be talking about people like that, you can't be making homophobic jokes, that also is also me just taking, or rather marrying the work that I do with like myself, like with myself and my community and how I exist in social spaces. Yeah, so it for me personally, it can never be a thing whereas once I step out of the office, I'm done activisting for the day. Like, listen, even at Groove, even in social spaces, even at family space, like, listen, we are feminists here and everywhere else.
Thank you so much. There's a saying that says, activism is my rent for living in this world. And I definitely feel the same. So, Nkateko, can I just ask, do you have movements? Do you have a space where You're not just an individual who's trying to share about the condition that you have. Do you have maybe support groups?
No, not at the moment, but it is something that I'm looking into doing. I haven't always been I don't want to say proud, but I haven't always been comfortable with like speaking on disability because I never wanted it to be a thing of oh, that's the disabled girl. She's about to give us a lecture on ableism and whatnot. And I realized, well, I've come to realize recently that these conversations are needed because the world does not know. Like, the way people cannot treat you in a certain way if they don't know that they're supposed to. Like, people cannot change the ableist languages if they don't know that certain words are ableist. And like some things are like people cannot prepare for you if they don't know what they're preparing for. And it's something that I've only come to realize recently. So now I don't have any organizations or anything as of yet, but I am working on it.
That's really great. Thank you. You said something very powerful. You said people cannot prepare for you if they do not know what they're preparing for. I think that's a very big thing that you can take even as you continue to speak about the journey. And kudos to you for not staying behind anymore and deciding to speak up. And not only your life will be affected, but a lot of people's lives will be too. So kudos to you. So moving on to Nomtandazo. What kind of track record do you guys think you have? What kind of improvements have you made so far in terms of the work that you do now? Okay, we seem to have lost her. Let us just try and give her a minute before to just see if she comes back or not. Okay. So we have a conversation actually. Let's just check the comments. She says, "Hello guys, thanks for the incredible conversation. I once worked with people on farms in KZN and I found that gender equality and feminism is a concept that still needs to be drilled on a consistent level. Queer rights is completely invisible or ignored, and my work focuses more on women's rights. And I used to struggle even to begin the conversations on queer rights. Do we have plans that target the group?" Mohau, are you able to answer this for us? Namtandazo, we'll get back to you now. We just answered a
I,
question.
I can't hear you, like you're cutting up, Ntokozo.
Are you able to hear me better now?
I still can't hear you. Is it my network? Nomtandazo, can you hear Ntokozo? Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
I can't hear Ntokozo, like the sound is warped.
Okay, let me move on to Namtandazo. Can you hear me? Can everyone else hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Samge will answer your question just now, but are you able to hear me now? How?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we had a comment. I'd like for each and every one of us to partake in this conversation. Samya says, "Hello, guys. Thanks for the incredible conversation. I once worked with people on farms in KZN, and I found that gender equality and feminism is a concept that still needs to be drilled on a consistent level. Queer rights is completely invisible or ignored, and her work focuses more on women's rights. And she used to struggle to even begin the conversation on queer rights. Do we have plans that maybe target the particular group?"
Shall I go?
Yeah, you may.
Oh, all right. I'd say that as Iranti, like I said, we lean a lot on partnerships, right? And partnering with grassroots organizations. So right now, off the top of my head, I want to say Utingo, but I'm not sure. But I know that there's Trans Hope. They're like organizations that we work with, in places like KZN, right? And they have like a better contextualization of what the needs are. So yes, we do work, but you know what I love about like the nature of the work that I've been doing with NGOs. Like sometimes, you can just pop an email and say, this particular community needs an intervention. And if they don't have the capacity to host something, they can also call one of their partner organizations. I think that a really great thing that a lot of the organizations that we work alongside with is that they have their own networks. So when we basically like tap them on the shoulder and be like, hey, they say that there's a need for this particular type of program in KZN. We can help out where we can, but you probably have better contextualization. And then we start building from there. So they are smaller organizations, not smaller, but like more grassroots organizations that we work with to try and tackle this. But like I would always say that, pop Iranti an email or pop any of the organizations that you know of an email to explain that, in this community we need the work that you're doing. And they always try to see what can we do or who can we collaborate with to get this work done.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I'll start by explaining about the social issues as a community of Newville we have faced. As a teenage girl who sees a lot of things happening in Newville, I mean to say schools, home, and in the community, whereby whenever I see those type of things happening, I don't feel good. But instead of sitting back and watch, I try by all means to change the drastic community and the excruciating things the youth is doing by joining the YYCPD organization so they can help me plan my ABCs safely and have a solution. How can we help the youth out here? Because if we have a survey in Newville about girls dating sugar daddies, almost 95% girls have same infections from same sugar daddies because of their home situations they're dealing with. Instead of looking the bad things they're doing, we have to find each and every solution behind that. It might take time for us to find the culprits, but at the end of the day, what happens in the dark will be clearly shown in the light. Least but not last, my academic journey was not really easy, but till today I'm still pushing hard, hoping one day I'll achieve my goals and pursue my dreams. Please fix your mic, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. So thank you very much for that, Namtandazone. Before we move on to the next part, I just want to answer Usamge and then we'll be able to move on. So, Soul City does have resources that you can read up on. If you do have the time, please just go to our website and then see if there are any resources that would correlate to the issues that you have. If not, you can do what Mohau suggested, send emails, go on the ground as well, just to get organizations that deal with similar issues to see how you can better tackle that. Thank you very much for engaging as well. Nomthandaza, I had a question for you. I asked, what is the progress, or what would you say is the progress that you guys have made so far? You guys have been submitting surveys, you've been conducting surveys. So, how has the community changed from what it was then to what it is, sorry, now with the work that you're doing?
The work that we did last year, early last year, we did an event about bullying, and also it deals with the GBV. And it helped us because many schools attended and we tried to do a survey, and it's getting better to schools with the issue of bullying. And even GBV, many kids try reporting about the issues that they face at home, but we're still working onto that, hoping that we'll surely get the solution and the ideas.
Thank you very much. So, I have a question for everyone who's watching and for us as well. I find it so interesting that we are in 2024, right? But we still are facing the same issues that people used to face back then. we still have a high rate of domestic violence, homicide. Why do you think this is? Why is it that many years later, 30 years into democracy, granted that democracy did not mean that things were just going to fade away, but why is it that as a society we are still facing the same social ills that we did back then, now in 2024? Any takers?
The reason why we're still facing that, it's because we tend to vote for many political issues, and we change like siyashintsha most of the times, hoping that things will get better, but only to notice that each and every day it gets worse. Like akunashintsho, they promise to tell us this and that will change, but you do not see any progress.
Mina mara thina senzani ke on the ground, because siyabazi labantu abadlengula abantu, siyabazi lamakhaya la abantu bashaywa khona, siyabazi la abantwana go out of their homes to date older men for money. What are we as individuals doing about that?
We try, like Tina, as YYCPD, we try by donating sanitary pads to school, because kwesinye isikhathi you might find the reason nokuthi ingane yesikolo dates with older people because endlini yaswela, she doesn't get anything ekhaya. So we as the YYCPD, we suggest ukuthi we give you the pads and see ukuthi what is it going to change. Is it the community or is it you?
Can anyone else please just add on to the conversations? Remember, guys, it's a conversation.
Mm. I think I'll add on. I think also one of the reasons why 30 years later we're still facing so many challenges. Number one is because a lot of issues are intersecting. Like just because employment won't thing, fixing the issue of employment won't necessarily fix the issue of gender-based violence. Like there's so many like interacting gears that have to move in the ship, right? But I think also like another thing is accountability. I don't think that there's a culture of accountability in South Africa, especially like in the government space. Like a politician can, a minister, a member of parliament can steal money and then they'll still be there next week, you know? So we need accountability in terms of that. And accountability also means like if someone has committed to a particular program or has committed to um like a certain like KPI, key performance indicator, and I'm particularly referring to like government, people in parliament, so the people that are higher up and should be working towards better, building a better country and better service delivery. There's no accountability. Like whenever somebody can like like right now we're heading towards like elections, right? And there are so many promises that are made. What happens now when somebody says I'm going to make sure that there are 1 million jobs and there are no million jobs by the due date that they had set for themselves? You know, it's like we allow, and not to say we allow like we're sitting and not doing anything, but what ends up happening is that people commit to these great deal of things on how they're going to tackle social issue. Money is allocated, it goes missing, and that's just it. So I think that something that we deeply benefit from is having some sort of accountability measure. Like I as a civilian should be able to hold the minister of what accountable because they are still pit toilets in schools when they said that they'd have that eradicated by 2020. These are random figures, but I know that that is a commitment that had been made at some point. But what I'm saying is that there's no culture of okay, but when it's like you're not doing your job, so move to the side so we can get someone else. You know, like yeah, I think that that's something that's deeply missing. And I think that even if we have conversations about accountability, we need to do it in such a way that it is accessible to the people. Which is why I'm saying that Bona, people who doesn't know how government works, has never been to government offices, must have the information to say that okay, but our councillor or the municipality is failing us in this particular regard. Let me report it. Let there be a chain of action. Let there be a person, a name, a department at the least that is held accountable. We just don't have that in place. But I think that if we can move towards that, we'll make so much more progress.
Thank you so much. I have a question though that feeds into your question, your answer. Sorry. Why is it that that we are so quick to want to hold government accountable, but we cannot hold each other accountable as members of society. Because this thing starts at the ground before it moves up. What are we doing in our communities as individuals, as people who are well equipped and knowledgeable? Because we are part of movements, right? These movements, they equip us with knowledge. They give us the basics. We know how to start these conversations. We know the process that needs to be taken in order for a particular issue to be taken seriously. Senzani thina. Nabo bonomthandazo, they are going into their communities. They are actively saying, I am here, I will be the change. What are we doing there? Who gets to hold us accountable as individuals?
I think that in that point, it is our responsibility to hold each other accountable, but also get the cops involved when possible. Because I mean, like with some of the examples that that have been made, was a conversation around like statutory rape, right? You know, it's so difficult, like in real life application of certain things, because you go and you'll point out that this thing is wrong, but it's like you don't have the power to physically drag someone away from the victim to take them to jail, right? So sometimes like accountability needs to be a group project, because one person can't do it alone. It is very difficult, like even when you see a woman being harassed, it's very difficult to step in as one individual when there's a crowd of people sitting back, just like, waiting, right? So I think that collective effort is so important, and holding each other accountable, like within our communities, to say that this is not how we do things. We need to take action. I think that the a roadblock, for the lack of a better word, but the roadblock we often face is that even when somebody wants to take action, it's one person, and they need community to stand up and say, like there's power in numbers. And sometimes, like when you are one person fighting for a cause, it feels like nothing's moving, nobody's taking you seriously. The people that are supposed to help you enforce this accountability are not doing so. So I think that community effort is also very important. That coordination within a community to say, this is something that we can't allow, so let's act. And also just holding. That's when you, as a community, you now also hold the other stakeholders accountable. Yeah.
Okay, Nkateko, you're just going to give us your feedback, right? And then before we do that, can we all just sit with the question of how? How are we going to do that? How is Mohao as an individual going to do that in her community? How is Togozo as an individual going to do that? How is Nkata? Because Nomtanda is already doing it, which means it's a doable thing. So how do we then pull that and take it back to our communities? But for now, Nkateko, over to you.
For me, I was actually thinking what Mohau was saying, that for me, I was thinking that it's a thing of the people in power are kind of all the same. Like there's no accountability, because you can't hold somebody accountable for something that you also would do. I don't know if that makes sense. And so there hasn't been accountability, because I think there hasn't been accountability, because you can't hold somebody accountable for something that they would also do. That's why in the higher ups there hasn't been accountability given.
Thank you very much. So this is a question for everyone besides Nomtandas. Nomtandas, you're still in school, next. Okay. So why vote for you? Moha, are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote?
Yes, of course.
Hearing it. Kateko, are you registered to vote?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm also registered to vote, so we will see each other at the voting hall. So before I move on to other questions, we had a comment from Samke. Some guests said that for her, from her experience working with grassroots and communities, as a nation, we never focused on the psychological and psychosocial aspect and impact of apartheid, our history. Hence, particularly in GBV, we see it escalating rapidly. So she's answering the question that I asked her, how is it that 30 years later we still are facing the same issues, like nothing has changed? Which is essentially true. I think there's just so many layers that we could just unpack into these issues that all formulate and go into one thing. So I have another question for you, Nkateko. What would you say, in your experience, right? What are the biggest barriers that disabled people encounter in accessing education, healthcare, employment opportunities, in South Africa? And what steps do you think can be taken to address these challenges that they face?
Okay, so I think lack of accessible transportation has been a barrier. You find that, um, I mean, yeah, lack of transportation has been a barrier in terms of cost as well. You find that disabled people either have to ask a trusted person to help them get to where they want to get to, or take private transportation, which is so expensive and a lot of us cannot afford to do. Also, physical barriers such as facilities. Sometimes we find ourselves again asking for assistance. We ask people to come with us because we know that when we get to wherever we're going, there won't be any ramps. The doors are too small, like we cannot go in. Counters are too high, like we get to a place of service and we want to inquire the service, but the counter is too high, and so somebody else will have to speak on my behalf, which is so dehumanizing, which can be so dehumanizing at times, because I can speak for myself, but this counter is a barrier. Also, we get to these places and people are not trained on how to um work with us. Like people will you find that you get to a place and people will create small huddles to whisper about us instead of asking us what we need and how to help us. So people are not trained on how to deal with people with disabilities. And I think to improve these to help with these challenges, I think we can improve with accessibilities of public transportation and provide maybe subsidies. I'm really bad at that word. Subsidies for private transportations, options for people with disability. Maybe implement mandatory disability inclusion and sensitivity training for healthcare professionals, law enforcement, and other relevant personnel. Ensure that all healthcare and law enforcement facilities are fully accessible and equipped to serve people with diverse disabilities, increase funding and resources for disability inclusive services, including sign language interpreters, braille materials, and assistive technologies, strengthen enforcement of existing laws, because I think we have pretty great laws at the moment, but they can be better. They can be more followed through, and policies that protect the rights of people with disabilities to access their essential services. And by involving these various groups, I think a thorough and taking a thorough approach, South Africa can help make sure that people with disabilities have fair access to healthcare and law enforcement and essential services. Thank you. You're muted.
Oh, thank you so much. So, the greatest thing about these kinds of conversations is that because of people like you are now able to change the narrative and influence the decision making and how people treat you. So, thank you so much for sharing that. And Nomtandazo, over to you. So, what GBV related campaigns have you planned? And then just tell us more about the survey you sent to some schools in the area, besides the bullying, what service, what other things have you done?
Other survey that we have done at schools, it's whereby we once spoke about GBV again, because GBV is the number one issue that people face each and every. About our research, what we got is every after 6 minutes, a human get killed. So we're doing that research and hoping how can we get the ideas and the solutions. And apart from that, we would like for the Soul City to help us get some of the resources whenever we're donating to schools so that they can help us. Can you hear me?
I think the cause is frozen.
And apart the survey that we did, to be honest, almost 80% it's all about GBV, how it takes at home, ukuthi ingane zilingana nathi, how do they deal with it. And they sometimes fail to focus on their studies because of the GBV that are facing at home. And we as the YYCPD, we hope that we are going to get the support from other organizations, because we are the youth, and dealing with such issues sometimes it's not easy. But if we get united as the community and different types of organizations, I hope we can get the solutions and the ideas. How can we stop the GBV? But other than that, instead of looking at the victim, why don't you see the reason, and why don't you see the what was the reason that the person abused the woman?
We must converse, guys, because while we wait for our facilitator, it's a conversation.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. May I ask, what was the question? What was the initial question? Okay, in is back.
Okay, I am back. My sincere apologies. I'm now using my phone. My laptop just died. So the conversation was around Unomtandazo, into what GBV related campaign she has planned and what she can tell us more about the surveys that she's done so far. But since you are back, it's good to have you back. I have a question for you, Mahal, right? So my question is that what cultural barriers do women, children, queer and persons with disability face in South Africa?
There's something happening with the audio.
Is everyone else able to hear me? Are you still not able to hear me properly, Mahal?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay. So I had a question for you. So my question is that what cultural barriers, right, do women, queer children, and persons with disability face in South Africa?
Because I can't hear you. I lose the sound as you speak. But I can hear everyone else clearly. I just don't know why it does that.
You can't hear me still?
It's like I'll hear you and then your next sentence I won't hear. But let's try again.
Okay. What cultural barriers, you heard that,
Yeah.
do women, children, queer, and people with disabilities face in South Africa?
I mean, in terms of cultural barriers, I think the first one off the top of my head is language, accessibility of language. Sometimes when you go to KZN, you need to address them in the language that is predominantly spoken there. Sometimes language won't help. So that language barrier in trying to access, in trying to give out information in a way that your particular audience receives it and understands it. I think that I don't want to say that patriarchy is our culture inherently, but I think in the way that we practice culture, patriarchy has taken up space in a way that and I particularly mean like if even if you just think of like we call it an mcimbi. I don't know what to call it an mcimbi. I'm not even Zulu, but I don't know like the another word for it. But like just even the culture around the women are the ones that must cook, the men are the ones that must kill the animal, or yeah, like things like that. Whereas as an working in an organization that focuses like that does work for gender non-conforming people, you start to see that we say that this is a thing for men, but why? So I think those sort of barriers, and I think that just in the way that patriarchy has taken up space, it has created an environment that is very incorrect, where people will say that no, but this is a man, this is how a man must behave. And when they say that, they're talking about toxic masculinity and having a violent nature. So, not to say that, I want to reiterate that patriarchy is not necessarily the culture, but the way that it has taken up space within cultural behavior and how we've made it seem like, no, but you must be doing this because this is your agenda. So I think those are some of the challenges. And I always implore people to sit down and evaluate like why you do things. Like you can't do things because you grew up and you grew up like this and it's fine. So I think that it's very important that we sit and we think deeply about the cultural things that our cultural experiences, what we see as cultural norms, and whether they deserve to stay in this current social climate that we are trying to continue with, like where we want to go. We've spoken a lot about like the past and how things used to be, but like as we build a better South Africa, we need to reevaluate whether the things that we have accepted as perhaps cultural norms, whether they will work for the environment that we want to cultivate moving forward.
Thank you so much for that. So I have one last question, and this applies to all of us, right? So, how can organizations like Iranti, Soul City, we also have the Youth Crime Prevention Desk, collaborate with people who are influencers like Nkateko, activists like Nomtandazo to amplify the voices and concerns of marginalized communities? This does include women, children, queer individuals, and disabled people in South Africa. How do we as a collective who represent different things come together, fight for one thing or stand for one thing, which is now young people, queer individuals, children, and disabled people in South Africa? How do we move to a point where we are able to come together, stand for their rights, and accessibility for them as well?
I mean, I'm willing to go first. Is that okay? All right. In Nkateko mentioned something around like there was a question that you asked like which organizations they're with, and she said that she's still looking for some. I think that once you are in the NGO space, it's very easy to build your network. A very simple thing that we can do after, just in terms of like this particular conversation, is link up in Kateko with like organizations that might be able to help her in whatever type of work that she wants to do. So sharing our networks, I think network sharing is very important. I also think that it's important that as organizations we go out into the communities that we want to serve. It doesn't help us to only have these conferences where it's only NGO people, like, because then you go out into the space, like how are we making sure that the people that we're advocating for can access this? So I think that that's why outreach programs are very important. It's important that you also learn how to contextualize what you want to do. You might have this great big idea of something that you want to do in Pretoria, but you need to speak with the people from Pretoria to hear what are your challenges. How can I bring my expertise and help you guys, but in a way that I'm giving you information that is actually helpful, and I'm not just giving you like a plethora of information that won't be useful to you or accessible. And furthermore, just highlighting, we need to also evaluate how accessible we make the information that we share. I know that you also asked, I mean, bringing the work that we do as activists to influencers, right? Invite them to your events. I know that as Iranti, we had an event called Live Out Proud, and we had a lot of like people that are in the social media space just come and learn about Iranti, learn about the work that we do. Encourage them to follow us, hit us up if they want to somehow maybe collaborate or even just learn from us as an organization. So it's basically me just saying again, speak to the people that you want to, your target audience, like speak to them, engage with them. Don't keep the work that you do in the NGO sector where you're only speaking to other civil society organizations. You need to engage with community members as well.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to add on what Mokau has just said?
I think I'll go next. How that was, I think that was a great suggestion. I also think just drawing from each other's strengths, and building from that. Like Mahao said, maybe with events we can invite each other to each other's events. I think drawing from each other's strengths and building onto that can be a great starting point, and not just be individuals in these spaces. Yeah.
Namtandazo, would you like to say something as well?
Yes, I can only share their social platforms in the private chat.
Okay, thank you so much. So, just to highlight on the things that we've spoken about today, starting from Unam Tandazo, she highlighted the importance of coming together and going to your demographic, young person to young person, but also still finding solutions for the issues. She also mentioned how surveys have been very instrumental in the work that they do, social media too, and how they've been able to create a safe space for young people. And then Kateko highlighted the importance of speaking, because when you now speak, people are now able to accommodate you better. People are also now able to create policies or create laws that allow you to have accessibility to things. But she also highlighted the struggles that disabled people face, things like transportation, accessibility. And I think this is great because Mohau also she highlighted so many things, but she also, the one thing that stood out for me is how we must not just do things for the sake of doing them, we must question why things are done. And you spoke very well about the visibility of queer people in every space and the work that Iranti does. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I'm not sure if anyone does have a question, but I'd just like to answer this particular question on behalf of Soul City. So Soul City has already started. Like last week, we were at Carlton Center campaigning for Why Vote for You. This was not only a thing that included us, Soul City, as individuals, but we also included the community as well. So we are also actively trying to put the message out there to encourage people to be part of organizations. And before we end the live, I'd just like to ask, Kateko, do you have any last remarks?
No, I think I'm good.
Nomtandazo, do you have any last remarks for us? Are you able to hear me? Okay, Mohau, let's just move on to you. Do you have any last remarks before we close off our session?
I would encourage people to follow Iranti.org on social media platforms so that they can learn a little bit more about the work that we do, but also just, like we said, pop us an email if you feel like there's certain work that needs to be done. Even if we can't do it, perhaps our partner organizations may be able to. So yeah, I'm encouraging everybody to just reach out to these organizations that do this work.
Thank you. Nomtandazo, can you please just let us know about your social media? Where can people find you?
Um, Instagram, it's Youth Youth Crime Prevention Desk channel. Then our TikTok page is Youth Youth Crime Prevention Desk. Facebook page is Youth Youth Crime Prevention Desk page.
Thank you so much. Gateko, where can people find you? Okay, it seems like Gateko is having a network issue. Mohau, as an individual, where can people find you? Because we already know where to find Randy. Where can we find him?
I am on Instagram and Twitter at Mukhau Makitla.
Okay. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. You can find us on the platform that we are currently on, which is Soul City Institute for Social Justice. You can find me on Instagram as Ndoki_Ngwenya. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I will never not stress the importance of conversations. This was great conversations. Thank you for the honor and privilege of allowing me to facilitate the conversation for you. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Mohau. Kateko's no longer here. I'll see you guys on the voting polls. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.